Oh, man. You know, Joe Musso, he does some great work. But
Goosebumps.
That was something special. That was something special there, Joe. Nice work. It's been a long time since so many of us have discussed the mechanics of an ankle and how it can affect the mobility of one of the top quarterbacks in football. But here we are. Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, enter the AFC title game. Just how healthy is he is the question. Also mentioned this week, Joe Burrow, a perfect 3-0 against Mahomes and the Chiefs, and looking to lead the Bengals into a second straight Super Bowl. Welcome back, Pete Prisco and Danny Kanell, to get their thoughts on this game. Pete, do you have goosebumps after watching that?
Joe Musso makes you want to put a forearm in somebody's helmet. You know, that's what he makes you want to do. Boom! You ready to go? I'm ready to play.
Yeah, that was a great one by Joe. We have to start, of course, with the number one storyline here, Danny, which is, of course, the health of the ankle. You were a quarterback. How concerned are you about this injury and how it can affect Mahomes, not just at the beginning of the game, but as the game progresses?
So I'm not that worried about him. I think he's going to be fine, and I think he'll be able to maneuver around the pocket, maybe not like he always has been, which makes him the clear-cut best quarterback in the NFL. But when I watched him last week, when he was hopping in the pocket on one foot and still able to make every throw necessary, I look at him after a week of rehab, seeing him practice in full participation, watching him, we're analyzing him walk off the podium, but also considering how heavily taped up he'll be, how heavily medicated he'll be. I don't think it's that significant issue. I also think you think about a quarterback who's a veteran, who's figured out different ways to win throughout his career. And this is just part of that growth where he does have a wealth of experience playing against different defenses where they've tested him to be patient, playing within the system, containing him in the pocket. He's seen so many different ways, and yet every single time he's figured it out. I think he'll figure it out again today versus the Cincinnati defense.
Yeah, I think this could be a problem for him. And such a big part of his game is off schedule and stepping up in the pocket and moving away from pressure and being able to make those big plays down the field when he escapes pressure. If he can't escape pressure, it's going to be a problem. I love the guy. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. He's the MVP this year. But so much of what he does is based on his ability to move. And I think if he can't move facing this defense, that's going to be a problem. Last week, we know what the Bengals want to do. They usually play a lot of zone coverage. Last week they came after Josh Allen a little bit, and they did it with a lot of delayed safety and corner blitzes, and that kind of confused them and kind of kept him in the pocket, didn't allow him to get outside. I think that could be a problem for Mahomes if he can't move. And again, we won't know until the first couple snaps how he looks, but if he's limited in terms of his mobility, I think that could be a problem for the Chiefs.
On the other side, Joe Burrow is 100% healthy. And this week, one of our producers, Noah Mandel, was harassing the research department to give him something negative about Burrow's game. What the research department came up with is that when Burrow is sacked more than 3 times, they lose more than they win to the Bengals. When he's not sacked more than 3 times, they absolutely dominate. So, Pete, that makes pressure extremely important here for Kansas City.
Well, it does, and when you look at this offensive line, it's a problem in terms of when you look at it on paper. But last week, they overachieved in a big way. They had a great plan. They made it easy on Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow gets the ball out. That's the best part about his game. He comes to the line of scrimmage, has an idea where he's going with the game. If you adjust, he'll adjust. He'll find the guy, and he'll get the ball out quickly. And that has to happen in this game. He can't sit back there and take shots because the offensive line played well last week, but there's big questions as to whether they can do it a second week in a row. And I think that's the big challenge for Joe Burrow. Get the ball out quickly. Get the ball to your playmakers. Let them create with their legs. If you stand in, this might be a problem against this Chiefs front.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. I think it's probably, one of the most important things to watch for in this game. I also think one of the more underrated aspects of Joe Burrow's game is his mind. He knows where to go with the football when he does see pressure, and he's always kind of has that ability to anticipate, okay, here comes a guy coming, where do I get rid of it now? And he gets rid of it, and sometimes the receivers aren't even out of the break. I went back and watched some game film from this past weekend against the Bills. The ball is coming out, and he knows when to get rid of it. He's also got some mobility that I think is underrated. So that's something crucial that I think he's going to need both of those. He's going to need where to go with the football when there's pressure, and he's also going to have to extend somewhat at times because I don't think it's going to be a clean pocket all day. But much like it was last year when he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL, He is one of those rare gems that does not faze him when he faces pressure.
Ability to throw a guy open, certainly with Joe Burrow. So with all that in mind, then what's the matchup for this in terms of what to follow in this game and key on?
So I think it clearly has to do with the pressure we're just talking about with Joe Burrow. So I went with the interior of that Chiefs defense in nose tackle Chris Jones, who's one of the best players in the league. He's got 15.5 sacks on the season against the interior of that Cincinnati offensive line, where you've got a couple backups in there. And the interior pressure is what can flush your vision. It can mess with your vision when your ability to step up in the pocket, which every quarterback wants to do, including Joe Burrow, and just the impact it has overall on messing up the run game, messing up the pass game. All the fits can be blown up by an interior pass rusher like him. So I think it's Chris Jones versus the interior of that Bengals offensive line.
Nothing better than a Sunday morning when Danny copies my paper. I love that. Danny, quit looking over my shoulder. We had the same exact one. It was all about Chris Jones, and Chris Jones has to be blocked. And this is one of those guys. He doesn't have a playoff sack. Think about that. And he's talked about it all week long. I'll get one to make you guys happy. So he knows he doesn't have a playoff sack. He didn't have one last week either. But you know what he had against the Jacksonville Jaguars? He had 4 pressures and 2 quarterback hits. The guy influences the game even when he doesn't put the quarterback on the ground. And that's the ultimate challenge. I say it all the time. Every defense has game wreckers. The game wrecker for the Chiefs, it's Chris Jones. If you block him, you're going to have success. If you don't, it's going to be a long afternoon.
I also think, too, Pete, the impact he could have on the game may not be in the sack column, but if they are focused on him, which I do think they'll have to be, and they're doubling him and putting a lot of attention to him, somebody else on that defense has to step up for the Chiefs if he's occupying a lot of bodies up front.
What about some of the talking that's been going on this week? I mean, it's been Cincinnati-based, them referring to it as Burrowhead Stadium, the mayor of Cincinnati saying that Burrow needs to take a paternity test to see if he's Mahomes' father. I mean, Danny, that's a lot of smoke that's going to KC this week.
I love it. I think it adds a lot of intrigue, and one of the reasons I gave Chris Jones as one of the players and matchups to watch out for is we saw what he said at the podium when he said, "We'll see you all at Burrowhead when it comes to the game." The Cincinnati mayor needs to shut up. He doesn't have anything at stake here other than his reputation. Just keep your mouth quiet. But all of this reminds me of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Remember they took the big defensive guy and they messed up his car and he came out and wreaked havoc? Yeah. I think that's what you're going to see from Chris Jones.
Look, this is great for us. It's fun. It's theater. It brings a lot of attention to the game. But if you're not ready to play a championship game to go to the Super Bowl, and this is going to give you extra motivation, then you haven't hit the ceiling yet. There's something wrong with you. I don't buy any of it. I've had many an argument with a coach over the years. I remember guys who used to put the bulletin board material on the bulletin board back in the day, and they'd staple it up there and put it up there, and I'd say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're getting extra motivation." If you're not ready to play, there's something wrong with you. You're playing to go to the Super Bowl. If you are not ready and something somebody said motivates you even more, then that's on you. You got a problem. I love it. I don't think it has any impact whatsoever when it comes to kicking the ball off and playing football.
You know where I think it comes in, Pete? And it's not, you're right. When the time to kick off, if you're not ready to play, you don't belong there. I do think in the lead up to the game, in the preparation, when maybe you're tired, you maybe practice towards the end of practice, and you might shut it down and kind of coast through the motions, and you say, uh-oh, and that just little bit of reminder, remember what they said about our team? Forces you to get a couple extra reps after practice or watch just a little bit more game film because you were tempted to shut it off. That's where I think that mental motivation, those mental mind games can come into play.
Pete's just shaking it.
You should have been doing it in the first place. You're planning to go to the Super Bowl, Danny. Stop it.
All right. Okay, the game all week long has been a pick'em. The line's been 1.5. Now it's sitting at 2. The total has jumped to 47 and a hook. So what's the pick here for you, Pete?
I'm going with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I'm just concerned about Patrick Mahomes. The mobility is such a big part of what he does and what they do on offense, and how do they compensate for it? They're not a great run team. Do they try and run the ball more to take some of the pressure away? And I think in the end, I think it's going to be the Bengals go in there and win again, get to 4-0 against Mahomes. Burrow has the big advantage, and you're right, there will be T-shirts this week, Burrowhead Stadium.
Woo, man, those will fly off the shelves, too, in Cincinnati if it does happen. I'm on the other side. Now, to be full disclosure, I've been on the Chiefs since Monday, feeling like, oh, you know what? Mahomes is going to figure it out. They're going to rehab him. He's going to play, and he's not going to be affected by that ankle. But I'm willing to admit that maybe he's not 100%, but even at 80, 100% in the pocket, I still think his arm is devastating. And his arm strength, one of the things we watch him when he does throw is his ability to throw off balance when he doesn't have his legs under him and he's not able to push off like a traditional passer. He's got a rubber arm that can make any throw that's out there with his ankle or without his ankle. So I like the Chiefs, but I also think the bigger impact is going to be the pass rush of the Chiefs. I do think they're able to get home to Joe Burrow. I think that's what we're going to be talking about after the game.
Danny Kanell, Pete Prisco breaking down the AFC title game between the Chiefs and the Bengals in Kansas City. Great stuff, gentlemen. Thanks for hopping on with us here on HQ. And that is a game, of course, you'll be able to see on CBS. Since he has won 6 of the past 7 meetings in the regular season, and we mentioned Joe Burrow perfect against the Chiefs, will that change today, or is Burrow headed to a second straight Super Bowl by winning at Burrowhead Stadium? Our coverage underway at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS, streaming exclusively on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.